Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. You're watching Indigo Tech Tutorials. In this video, I'm going to continue on the series where we're building Discord using Ruby on Rails, and I have a ton of cool new features planned for this episode where we're going to totally improve on the app that we built in the last video. So if we check out what we have so far, we have the ability to create servers, and then inside of the server you can have different channels. And each channel is basically like a chat room where you can talk to other people in real time. And all of this is already working really well. But there is obviously some improvements we can do. Like one thing is the site is not mobile responsive at all. So once you go down to a smaller screen, it's not going to be very usable. So that's probably something that we can cover. And then there's a bunch of other things like small little improvements that we can add to make this an even better experience for the users who are going to use your platform. Yeah, there's probably so many things that we could do to improve the site, but I want to start with something simple. And one thing I was thinking is maybe adding the ability to edit the servers, because right now you're able to create a new server, but you're not able to edit an existing one. And also it might be cool to add an image for each server. So instead of just showing like the text, we could show the image of the server, which I think that's how they do it in Discord. So you usually see like all of the images for the servers on the left. And then inside of the channels, it also looks a little bit different too than this UI. We could probably do some improvements there. So let's start with editing the server. So right here, if you click on a server, it loads up the server page right here. And inside of the server page, we're rendering the sidebar with the channel rooms. And we already have kind of like a section for the options for the owner. And one of the biggest things is the create invite link option, where you're able to create an invite link for your server. So we could probably just add another link here to allow them to edit the server. I think that's a good place to start. And we should already have the edit page, which was added when we did the scaffold for the servers. So let's go ahead and open up the code, and then we'll head over to the app views servers show page. So the show.html.erb. And let's take a look at the code that we have in here. So we have this TurboFrame tag, which is for the dashboard, which is wrapping all of this content inside of this server show page. And then right here, we have this section where we're checking if the current user is the server owner. So if the user that signed in is the owner, we're going to show these additional options. So I think what we could do is just add a link to edit the server right next to the create invite link option. Also, real quickly, I want to add some padding because I don't like how this link is just like right on the edge of the screen. So adding some padding would be a nice little UI tweak that would make this experience a little bit better. So what I'll do is I'm going to add EX4, which is just a tiny bit of padding, but that should help. So if you go back to the server room, now there's at least a little bit of space on the side, so it's not as claustrophobic in the UI, and that's always a good thing. So now I'm going to add a link to edit the server right next to the create invite link. So let's just go inside of this div right here, and we have a flex class and justify end, which means it's pushing all of the content to the right side. So another thing that we might want to add is gap forward, which will just space out the elements inside of it and add a little bit of space in between each one. And then what I'll do is I'll go inside this div, and I'm going to start adding our new link. We'll do link to, and then we're going to put the text. So I'm just going to say edit server, and this is going to go to the edit server path. And then we'll just pass in the server here. And I'm going to add some styling, and I'm actually just going to copy the styling we have for the other button, because this is pretty easy. Just copy it there. And then maybe instead of having the same background color, we can change this to like a blue or something. Then we should be able to reload, come back in here, and cool, we have this new button right here to edit the server. So let's see if this works. If I click edit server and it doesn't work, we get a content missing error. And I think that's just the same thing we've been seeing in this series where the page that we loaded up doesn't have the matching turbo frame because we're navigating from inside of the turbo frame, which is this dashboard turbo frame. You need to make sure that every page that you are navigating to has a matching turbo frame. So what I'll do is I'm just going to copy this turbo frame dashboard, and then I'll head over to the server's edit page. And yep, right in here, I'm going to drop this in and wrap all of the content. And then let's go ahead and reload and try that again. So now if we go back to the server, click edit server, it actually does pop up the form, which is pretty nice. But if we want to style it to look more like the create server page where it looks like nice in a modal kind of vibe, what we'll do is I'll just copy whatever styling we put in the server's new. So if we come over here, yeah, it basically looks like we had this styling. I'm going to copy all of it, including the H1, and then I could just edit that text. So check that out, pop this in, make sure that we have the right amount of closing divs. And then instead of saying new server, let's say edit server. This should automatically have like the same UI. All right, that looks pretty good, honestly. And then one thing is we don't actually need most of these links, like show this server, back to servers. I don't really think that's important. So what I'll do is I'll go back to this edit page and I'll just delete the show this server link. And instead of back to servers, we can just say cancel. That's what we had before. And then cancel should go back to whatever server we were viewing. So it basically would be the show page. And we could probably get rid of this margin. I don't know. Oh wait, no, because there's going to be the submit button here. So we probably do want some margin. So let's reload, take a look at this. And I think that looks pretty good. If we press cancel, everything still works pretty well. So the next thing that I wanted to do is I wanted to add an image for the server. So like the server icon, server image kind of thing. So let's go ahead and put that in the form. And we're going to use active storage, which is a built-in library in Ruby on Rails that will handle all of your file uploads and file storage. So all we have to do to add a new image to the server is let's first go into our code and head over to the app models and the server.rb. And we're going to set up our image attachment right here. All you have to do is say has, let's do has one. You could do has many, but we really only need one attachment for the image. So we can say has one attached and then put in the key that we want to use, which I'm going to use image. Now that's going to set up this association, but we do have to go and run an active storage install command. So let's go back to the terminal. I'm going to close this out. And then I'm going to run that command to set up active storage. So it's going to be railsg active storage :install. We can run that and it's actually weird. I thought that you have to run a command, but maybe, oh look, right here, there is a command. Maybe I did a typo. Oh wait, it's not railsg, that's why. It's just rails active _ storage :install. My bad, because it's basically just a rake task. And then if you see what that did, all it did is it adds a migration to create our active storage table. That's where it's going to store all of our files that we do upload. And then we can just migrate the database after we do that. So it looks like somehow I got into the Rails console. That was weird. All right, let's do Rails DB migrate the database. And just like that, we have this new table. Actually, we have like 3 different tables because we have active storage blobs, active storage attachments, and active storage variant records, which these are if you're going to create variants, which means you have like you render a smaller, I guess like compressed image. You can do that with active storage. So let's say you want to use a thumbnail or something and like you don't want to show this huge image. If someone uploads like a 4K gigantic image, you might just want to scale it down and show them a faster, quicker, smaller image. Like that's definitely something you want to do because it's going to speed up your app a ton. Do stuff like that. Anyways, now that we have active storage set up there, we should be good to go. So I'm going to restart the server and let's go back to our app and we'll go into that edit page again. And the next thing that we're going to add is just a file field to allow you to, upload an image. And we can keep this really basic for now. Although eventually you probably are going to want to use some sort of like JavaScript file upload just so that you can preview the image and make it more pretty. But in its most simplest form, all we need is just a file field. What I'll do is I'm going to copy this field for the name, just paste it in, and then I'm going to change this to image like this. And instead of using a text field, we're going to do file field. I think everything else should be fine. Although instead of like anywhere where we're saying the name stuff, I'm gonna change that to image. I guess there's just some classes to show if there was an error or not. All right, so we can reload. I'll go back into this edit page. All right, and this is what it looks like right now. So we have this sort of image upload field, which isn't really that pretty, but it honestly doesn't matter that much, right? As long as it works. So now we should be able to click on this and add an image. So I have all these images from yesterday's thumbnail. So now that I put an image in, if I press update server, let's see what happens. So it looks like it did update it, although we redirected to this page that kind of like looks like it broke things. So we're gonna have to make sure that that is working correctly. So actually, let's go over to the controllers and the server's controller, and let's take a look at this update action. So we still have all of this code in here, which is like, you know, redirecting to the page, and it's handling all these formats. I don't really think we need to do this respond to. Like I did before, I kind of just removed the respond to and kept it really, really basic, because I think that's all we need for our app, because we're not going to really handle a JSON API at this point. This is just way simpler than that. So I'm going to get rid of that respond to, delete this format, and yeah, just keep it super, super basic. Get rid of the JSON response. So now it's more simple, but I still don't know why like the page is all white. Oh, I think I know why, because it redirected the full page for some reason. So that's probably not what we want to do. We would rather want to keep it inside of the turbo frame. But let's try this again. I'm going to try to upload an image, press update. And yeah, look, it's updating the full page because for whatever reason. So real quickly, I'm going to go back to the app views dashboard show page. Let's take a look at the turbo frame. So I remember yesterday, or like on the last video, we initially had set the target top to this turbo frame, and I realized that that was having some issues because then it would actually navigate the whole page, when really we just wanted to keep stuff inside of this one turbo frame. And that's still what I want to do, but I think what happened was I ended up putting target top onto the server's form. So let's go over to the app views servers underscore form partial and take a look at this form. All right, so yeah, look at this. We're actually setting the turbo frame top on this form. And the reason why I was doing that is because of when you create a new server, what I wanted to happen is I wanted to show that the new server was created and like show it over here. But if we didn't do target top, it would just, you know, reset the page. So it might reload the turbo frame after you're done, but it wouldn't update the server over here. So that's why I wanted to target the top of the page, which basically just means it would do a full page reload and re-render all of our, you know, new servers on the left. But actually, I don't think we have to do that anymore. And if we want to just update the sidebar, we could always use broadcasts, like action cable broadcasts, to update that instead of, you know, instead of just reloading the whole page. So I'm probably going to take off this turbo frame top and just remove that, and then we can take a look at how the experience changes. So if I go to edit this server, and I come in here, let's say I want to change the picture, and I click update, boom, that worked really, really well, and I think that is good. Now let's say we do have the image, let's try to render it underneath this title so we can just verify that it is showing up. So let's go to the server show page again, and right underneath this server name, why don't we just put an image tag, and we'll pass in the server.image, and then we're going to want to check if it's attached. So if server.image.attached question mark, and we can also set a width and height for this. Probably what I'll do is I'll set like width 40, height 40, and we'll do a rounded full, which means it'll just show up in a circle. But we can even do object cover, which means it'll automatically stretch the image, although it'll show in its correct resolution. It won't mess with, you know, the scaling, which some of the other object properties will make the image look distorted. This will actually make it fit. So let's see if it works. I don't think it's showing up because if we go back to server 6, I don't see the image. And I know the reason. It's because in our controller, the server's controller, if you look down at the server params, we're only expecting a name and we're not expecting the new image parameter. So all we have to do is add that new image parameter here. So now we can permit a user to upload an image through the form. And this is good because it's keeping our form secure. So it means that the user cannot update any other attributes on the server except for the ones that we explicitly permit. So that is a good thing. Now let's go back to the server and I'm going to edit this. And now when I upload an image and submit the form, it should actually upload the image. Yep, if we reload, we now see our image that's showing up. Although it is on the left side, so I kind of want to center it. And I probably will make it a little bit smaller now that I think about it. So let's go back to the server show page. And what I'll do is I'm going to add another div to wrap this server name and the image. So let's do a div class. And I'm going to say width full, and do flex call, which means the items are stacked on top of each other. And then I'm going to do item center to push them and center them in the middle. And then I'm going to wrap this content and then end off the div. Now what I'll do is for the image tag, I'm going to reduce it from the 40 width and 40 height, and I'm going to change that to, let's do 24. All right, so now if we come back in here, yeah, that's looking a lot better already. We have the server image right here. So now if we wanted to, on the left side, if we wanted to show the image instead of just the text, we could go and handle that. So I'm going to go to the servers, or actually I'm going to go to the dashboard sidebar, and let's take a look at what's happening. So we're rendering a partial server. So what we're going to want to do is go into that server partial, and right inside of here, that's where we're just showing the server name. So what we probably do is show the image, and since we already have that code on the show page, I'm just going to go back here and copy this and drop it in here. And we could probably make this a little bit smaller as well. So let's do like width 10, height 10, although that might be pretty small. Now, so we got an error because I'm still using the instance variable, but in this context, we just have it as a local variable, which means we have to remove the @ sign from server. And then if we reload, boom, we now get the image showing up over here, which I think that looks pretty cool for now. It's not bad. Although I know Discord, they do a little bit different vibe. They kind of have like a rounded edge, and it's also kind of smaller. So maybe, let me try to increase the image size. And then for this div with the background, we could do rounded large, so it has some rounded corners. That's not bad right there. We could also center the content by doing the same flex call item center. Just going to center that content in the middle. That's actually not bad. We could also add a hover effect, so you can totally tell like when you're hovering on an item that it is clickable. I always like when there's hover effects. We do like hover. Let's make the background slightly darker. Although now when we do that, it kind of blends into the sidebar. So maybe we'll go like super dark, like BG grade 900. Okay, there you go. Now you totally will know that this is clickable, so that's not bad at all. You could click on server, go into it. I think that's actually pretty chill. Now, as far as the channel sidebar, or actually it's a server sidebar, what I noticed for Discord is they usually just show it as a link, which is interesting. I don't really mind the background on this, but if you wanted your UI to be like really similar to Discord, you might just get rid of that background, and I'll show you how they do it, actually. So let's go to the view servers, server sidebar. And right down here, where we're rendering all the channels, we just have this simple code right here. And I think what we could do is just get rid of, we could actually just get rid of this whole div container. So we're only rendering the span inside of the link. We reload. Oh, now we get something like this, which actually does kind of look more like Discord. But what we probably want to do is add a hover effect, of course, because right now it doesn't even look like these are like that clickable. So what we could do is we could add hover underline, so at least it looks like a link now. Check that out. So there's the hover. And then one thing I was noticing, this is what I was going to tell you, Discord, for some reason, they always add like a pound sign before the channel name, like this. See, like hashtag. I don't know why they do that, but I'm pretty sure they do something like this. But yeah, I don't know if I like that UI. We could probably actually just do an icon instead. So what we could do is add a div, and we're gonna do flex gap to item center. We could still have the span for the channel name, but we could put an icon right here before the span. Let's go over to hero icons, which is the place where I get all of my icons. And let's try to think of what we would do for a chat channel. It probably would just be a chat kind of icon. So we could grab any one of these icons and then drop it in here. And let's go over to this class. I'll change this to width 8. Let's see what that looks like. All right, that's not bad, actually. That's not bad at all. Although I don't like the color, of course. Let's make it a little bit lighter. So let's do text rate 100. Now if we take a look at this, honestly, I think this UI is coming out really good. Now that I look at it, it looks clean. Honestly, I'm kind of impressed that I built this in such a short amount of time, too. All right, so now what I want to get to is I want to work on the experience for the real-time chats. So right now, like, it's kind of hard to tell which one is your message and which one is the other people's messages. So that's something that I definitely want to handle real quick. So let's go ahead and open up a secondary window so we can just test this out. So I'm going to go to incognito. Let's go back to our site. And I'm going to log in. Actually, I'm just going to create a new account. All right, so now that I'm on the new account, what we're going to want to do is we're going to join this server. So I'm going to go back to the server page and create a new invite link so that I can share this with this guy over here in the incognito. Let's go in here, and then we're going to click join server, and boom, we've now joined the server. This is insane. It's already so chill. So let's go to the chill lounge, and yeah, I want to work on kind of like improving this experience. Now that I look at it, we have this thing where like we just show all of the messages, and then you kind of have to scroll down. So that is interesting. I think what we could do is that usually what I do in like chat apps is that whenever there's a new message, I'll usually have it auto scroll down to the bottom. So we could probably build something like that, and I'll show you how to do that really easily with the Ruby on Rails JavaScript library. Let's check this out right now. If I like text on the right side, we did get the new message, but you have to scroll down to see it. So you couldn't really tell that there was a new message, even though it's totally real time. So what we'll do is let's go back into our code and let's head over to, I think it would be the servers channels show page. And I want to take a look at this show page. So this is what we have for our whole kind of app. So we have a form, or this is what we have for the chat screen, for the, real-time chat. This is where all the code is. And what we're doing is we're rendering the messages here, and then down at the bottom, we have the form for creating a message. So what I'll probably do is on this div for the rendering the messages, we have this thing called overflow Y scroll. That's setting up the scroll bar. So when there's messages that overflow, it's going to add like the scroll bar on the side. So what I'll do is I'll add a stimulus controller onto this div, which could handle automatically scrolling to the bottom. So what I'll do is I'm going to stop the server real quick, and I'm going to run a generator for stimulus. So let's do Railsg stimulus. And if you guys aren't familiar, stimulus is the library, stimulus is the JavaScript library that Ruby on Rails uses by default, and it works really well for adding like small little bits of JavaScript. You don't want to get too complex in stimulus because it can get confusing, but so does all the other JavaScript libraries. JavaScript is just a confusing language, and it can get messy, but I think stimulus does a great job of encapsulating small bits of JavaScript and working really well with Rails. There's a lot of helpers that make it just work really well with Turbo, like the navigation, Hotwire for broadcasting. It just works really well. And yeah, I'll show you guys how to do that. So we're going to run this command, Railsg stimulus, and then let's just create a controller called, I guess, auto scroll. Boom. Now we just like that, we have an auto scroll controller, and then we can just go and restart the server. So now to set this up, let's go onto this div that's rendering the messages, and I'm going to add a data controller attribute, and I'll set this to auto-scroll. Now let's go over to the JavaScript. So that is going to be in the app JavaScript controllers, and you'll notice we have this new auto scroll controller. And what we can do is right here in the connect, let's just console log hello, and this is going to print it out to the JavaScript console. So if we go back in here and inspect, if we inspect element, so you can press right click, inspect, and then go over to the console. What will happen is when you go inside of our chat room, you should see the message hello. So that's good. And then what we can do is we can just change this connect method. Why don't we just change this to scroll to bottom? That's going to be the name of the method. And to scroll to the bottom, we're going to say this.element scroll, I think it's scroll top. And then we'll set it to the element scroll height. And I think that should handle automatically scrolling to the bottom. So if we reload, go back into the chat room. No, that didn't really work. So I think I got it wrong. I'm going to quickly look that up. Scroll to bottom element in JavaScript. Wait, no, that should work. Setting scroll top to scroll height should work. For whatever reason, it didn't. Interesting. All right. Oh, wait. Guys, it's because we do have the method. I think this does work, but what we have to do is add back the connect and then call our custom method right when we connect. That's why it didn't work, because I totally renamed it. So now if we go, check it out, it totally scrolled to the bottom. And then what we can do is every time that we get a new message, we can automatically scroll to the bottom and use that method. So to do stuff like that, what I would probably do is I would add a target, and I would put each message as a target. So I'll show you what that means. So up at the top of our stimulus controller, we can set static targets. And this is going to be an array of different targets, which are basically just elements that you can use. Like, it's instead of doing document query selector, which is a lot of what people used to do, targeting elements, now you use a target, and it creates a specific link to a named element on the page. And it could be multiple elements. So what I'll do is I'll call this target scroll. And then the one cool thing in Stimulus is we can have a callback for whenever our target gets connected. So we can say scroll target connected. And let's console log. We'll just say new target added to page, which basically just means whenever a new message will show up, it'll run this connected function. And then we could just call this dot scroll to bottom to automatically scroll down the messages element. And then the last thing we have to do is just go back to our channels view folder, and we're going to go to the message partial, and then we can add the target to this div that's rendering the message. So I'll just add it right here at the end, and I'll say data. We do have to add the namespace, so it has to use whatever the name of our stimulus controller is. So it's going to be data-auto scroll target, and we're going to put scroll because that's the name of the target that we defined inside of our stimulus controller. And this should actually set up that functionality to auto scroll whenever we get a new message. So that's pretty awesome. And let's see if it works. So we're already over here at the bottom. If we try to talk between these two pages, let's see how that experience is. Like, hey, boom, check it out. It automatically scrolls, which is totally different than before. And if you do have the JavaScript console, you'll see all of these console logs that we're showing. We could probably get rid of those at this point, though. Let me get rid of that console log. And already, I think this is working very well. So you could actually totally have a real-time chat with your friends now. So say like, yo, and see on the right, we're getting the message. Let's say, How's your day going, bro? Imagine you're talking to your homie, like, hey, doing good. See, it's real time. Both pages are getting updated. Which is pretty crazy right here. So that's something that we can do, although there's obviously some problems with this functionality, because let's say that you were like reading old messages and then your friend just says like something funny and it automatically scrolls down, you might get annoyed. So that's why a lot of the chats, what they'll do is that if you did, let's say, scroll up, they would kind of ignore the new messages, but they might have a little button that pops up that says like, hey, new messages, scroll down, and it's like a button that'll automatically scroll down. So we could probably add that functionality. We could totally add that. So probably to do something like that, I would add a method, or not a method, I would add a class variable. I'm trying to remember what they call it. But what we could do is on connect, we can set a method like this dot user scrolled up, and we'll set this by default to false. And then what we'll do is inside of our method scroll to bottom, we'll just check like if the user has scrolled up, and we just return, which means it wouldn't actually affect anything. And then what we could do is back inside of our channel show page, let's add a callback, or let's add a data action to this div for scrolling. So whenever a user scrolls, we can set this variable scrolled up to true, which would then prevent this page from auto scrolling down. I think that's a good way of doing it. So what we'll do is I'm going to go to this messages element, and I'm going to add a data action. And let's just say scroll, and we'll go to auto scroll, and we'll create a new method called scroll up. And we can go back to auto scroll controller. We're going to have to define that new method, scroll up, right here. And then just whenever we do scroll up, we'll set the user scrolled up equals to true. I think that's a pretty good way of doing it. So if we go back in here and we try it out. So real-time chat. Oh, the only thing is, look, the functionality isn't really working. I think maybe what happened is the scroll event was maybe triggered. Yeah, you know what? It was totally triggered when we auto scrolled down because we're listening for the event. So that is one tricky thing. Because this is happening. So when we initially scroll to bottom, it's going to also fire this event and basically say that the user did scroll up, which is not a good thing. So we kind of have to figure out how would we get around that issue. And we might even do that by just checking like how far did they scroll up. So let's console log this dot element scroll top. I just want to see what the numbers look like for that. I'm going to make sure we have our JavaScript console open. When I go into the chat room, it looks like the scroll top is 1378. Oh, I also want to log scroll height. So we can console log this element scroll height. I want to see what the numbers are looking like. Okay, so it looks like our current scroll would be 1300, but the total height is like 2000, which is interesting. But what's going to happen is now like the functionality no longer works, even though the user didn't scroll up. So it's kind of like interesting. Also, when you're at the very bottom, it looks like it doesn't even max out the number, which is interesting. Because I think it probably is factoring in the height. So if we say this dot element dot height, let's see what that number looks like. Okay, height is undefined. I don't think that's how you do it. I think it would be like style dot height. Let's see, although, no, that's empty too. Yeah, this is kind of a tricky feature right here. What I want is I want it to auto scroll unless the user has, manually scrolled up. So we might want to handle this slightly different. So scroll to bottom. This shouldn't actually trigger this event at all. This should scroll without triggering a scroll event, but I don't think that's really possible. Yeah, it's tricky. So if I try to do this chat, it's not auto scrolling, but it looks like it almost did auto scroll on the left side, but I think it's because we're reloading the page whenever we submit the form. So it kind of resets the state of the user scrolled up. So I might just get rid of this for now, that feature. That's kind of tricky to build. If you guys have any ideas of how to do that, I would love to hear your opinions. But I think even just without that feature, this is already a really good vibe. Oh, and now we're getting the error undefined method scroll up because I just deleted that. So I'm going to go ahead and just remove that from this show page. Let's get rid of that scroll up action. And yeah, I'm sure that we could handle this somehow. But for right now, it seems kind of tricky. And I just want to move on to something that's kind of easier to build, I guess. Because right now, this experience is really good, in my opinion. We're able to chat in real time. It's just insane. But there's obviously some things that we could do to make this more of like a Discord experience. So one thing might even be playing a noise when a new message arrives. That's one thing that we could figure out. But I think the first thing that I might do is have a little bit different style for your own message. So I want to see like which one is my message. I want it to show up differently than the other people's message. Like even if we could put it on the right side instead of the left side, that would be cool. Yeah, we could totally build that functionality real quick. All right, so I'm going to show you guys one simple way we could change the styling for messages if it is, your message. But then I'll tell you why we wouldn't want to do that and why it won't really work. So I'll show you that real quick. So if we just go to servers channels message partial and we look at the styling right here, we're basically setting MR auto, which is going to push it to the right. We're also setting this background color. So let's say if we just wanted to simply, do some embedded Ruby to check right here, we could do embedded Ruby just like this, and then we could have a ternary operator to check, like, is the message user equal to the current user? We do something like that, and if it is equal, we show a certain style, otherwise we show another style. So let's say this is like, if it's another user, it's this styling. Then on the first one, that's if it is your message. So instead of doing like gray, we could do blue. Then instead of doing margin right, we do margin left. So I'll show you guys how that would look. If we go back into the server, it actually does work, if you see. But here's where the problem comes in, is when you're broadcasting. So let's say I send my new message. Check out what happens. We get this error that says, they don't know what current user is, because when you're broadcasting, you don't have access to that current user. So that's why this wouldn't actually work if you're going to have a real-time chat. We need to kind of do a hack around, but that is totally simple too. And what we'll do is we'll just have the JavaScript handle this check. So I'll show you guys what I mean. So what we'll probably do is actually have another stimulus controller. So yeah, let me put this code back just for 1 second. And then let's go into the terminal and I'm going to generate a new stimulus controller. So let's do RailsG stimulus. And then I'm just going to call it the message controller. And then we can restart, go back into that partial. And I'm going to set up that stimulus controller on our message partial. So I'll set the data controller equals message right here. So we're going to load up the stimulus controller. And then what I'll do is I'll pass in our different styling through the value API. So what I'll say data. Actually, I think we can use the classes API. I don't really remember. It's been a while since I did the stimulus stuff. So if I look up like stimulus.js classes API, I think they still have that. Okay, so you can have a, where is it? Static classes. You can put two different types of classes. And there's two ways of doing it. You can say class, or you can say, or wait, no, that's when you pull it out. So you still say the class. Okay, that's cool. So let's first go to the stimulus controller. So we'll go over to the app JavaScript controllers and the message controller, and let's define our static classes. It's going to be an array. And what we'll do is we'll have like a current user class, and then we'll have other user class. I think that sounds good to me. And then inside of our message partial, let's pass in the different classes. So we'll do data message current dash user class, and that will be, our styling with the blue. Then we can have a data dash message other user class, which will just be the standard gray. And then we can have our JavaScript decide, which one gets a certain class. And the way that we're going to do this is by, doing some JavaScript. So inside of connect, let's just console log decide which class to set on the message based on current user. Now let's go back, reload. Whoops. We're going to want to go back to our server. And yeah, right now, check it out. We don't have any class set, so like we kind of lost all the styling, but we're going to take care of that very soon. All right, as you can see, and we got like 30 different connects that were saying decide which class to set, but we haven't added the code. So what we really have to do is we have to check the message user ID and compare it to the current user ID. But you might wonder, how can we do that in JavaScript without, using Rails, without passing in current user in the partial? Well, it's actually super simple. What we'll do is we will pass in the message user ID because we do have that at this point. We have the message record, so we can tell, what the user ID is, what the username is even. So let's pass in a data message dash user ID value. And we could just set this to message.user_ID. So we would be able to pass that in. And then over in the messages controller, set our static values. And this is going to be an object. We can set user ID to, why don't we just do string? It's probably going to be a number, but I don't think that that's that important, right? We could just use string because we're just going to be comparing the ID and not really the number. So right here, user ID, we can console log this now too, saying this dot user ID value. Let's make sure that we have that available. So we come in here. If we look at the console log, we are getting the user ID inside of here. Now all we need to do is be able to figure out what the current user ID is. So for that, what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to put this in a meta tag. So what I mean is, let's go to the views layouts application. And I'm going to stick it right up here in the head as a meta tag. That's something that we usually do. As like a web developer, you might store stuff in the meta that you want JavaScript to access, just because it's a pretty chill place to put your stuff that's going to be able to be accessed anywhere in your app. So let's set a meta name equals current-user ID. And we're going to set the content equal to the current user ID, just like that. And now all we have to do is pull out this content inside of our JavaScript. So if you go back to the message controller, let's go and grab that user ID. So I'm going to create a variable current user ID, and I'm going to set this to document query selector. We're going to find a meta with a name equal to current-user-ID, and then we're going to grab whatever the content is. And now let's print this out too right here. Make sure that we have that available. If we go back in our chat, check the console, check it out. We are now getting the two IDs, which is the message user ID and the current user ID from the meta tag. That's already pretty incredible. And the last thing that we have to do is just compare those numbers and then decide which class to set based on if it's the current user or not. So yeah, that's super, super easy. That honestly is insane how easy it is once you figure out how to do this. This is something that I had to do like in the past, and I just kind of learned how to do it. It was awesome. So here we're going to check, if the IDs are equal. So if the message user ID is equal to the current user ID, then let's set the classes. So we'll say this.element.classes.add, and we'll pass in this.current user classes. I think that's how you do it. Although this is going to come back as an array. So I think to pass it into classless add, we have to use this dot syntax, which basically is the same as just iterating over each element in the array and running the same method. So that's a cool little thing you can do in JavaScript. And I want to make sure that that even works first. So let's reload. Boom, it totally works because we get the styling on our message. And then if we create a new message, check it out, it automatically works. That is insane. So the last thing that we have to do is just the else. Copy the same code, except for instead of adding the current user class, we'll add the other user classes. And we reload, and boom, you have a nice looking chat UI, and you'll be able to easily tell which messages are yours and which messages are the other person. That is insane. So check that out. On the left side, we're getting the styling for my message. On the right side, we're getting the styling for the other message. This is already so cool. Isn't that insane? What's up, bro? Yeah, I mean, that was a pretty awesome feature right there to get that out of the way. There's probably a lot of more things that we could do at this point. Probably the most major thing I'm thinking about is just mobile responsive, because I know right away you guys are going to want to take this on your phone, and the UI right now doesn't really support mobile at all. And the way that we would support it is just by making these sidebars collapsible. That's like the biggest thing right now, is just making these be able to collapse and then slide out when you need them, which is another kind of like tricky thing. Some JavaScript sprinkles, which I'm sure in some JavaScript libraries that's like the easiest thing. You guys probably have a whole component for that, but in Stimulus you kind of are on your own. Although I think there is some Stimulus UI libraries. I don't really like to use them though because they just don't seem that intuitive. It's like, why not just do it yourself, I guess. So we just have to figure out what that UI would be like and set that up so that we can have the mobile responsive. All right, let's try to add mobile responsive functionality to our app so that, once you go on a mobile phone, you can still use this app and have a great experience. And I really don't think it's going to be that difficult to implement. All we have to do is basically just make this sidebar collapse and add a little button up in the nav bar to slide out the menu. So what I'm going to do is let's just clear out the server real quick, and I'm going to generate a new stimulus controller by doing railsg stimulus, and I'm just going to call this the sidebar controller. And then what we'll do is we can restart the server, and I'm going to go over to the views layouts application. And really what I want to do is I'm probably going to put the controller just on the body, which is not really the best thing to do. But it's just how I'm going to do it right now, I guess. And then we can always refactor it later. So if we put the controller right here, it means anything inside of the body can now access this stimulus controller. So then what I'll do is I'll go to the layouts navbar, and I'm going to add our I'm going to add our button for expanding or collapsing the sidebar, and that'll probably just be an icon. So I'm going to go over to hero icons, and the usual icon for drop down, it would just be the bars. So right here we have like bars 3. We can even do bars 4. I don't really know which one is better. Let's go 4. We can just drop this in right here, although I'll probably wrap this in a link to. Just do like a link to with empty link, and we'll wrap this icon just like that. And then we can change the styling here. Let's go like width 10 and make it light. Now let's take a look at how that looks over here in the browser. So now we do get this showing up. Although one weird thing is the home button gets pushed all the way in the middle. I think that's because we have this justify between class. So what we probably want to do is we want to wrap both of these elements in a div so that they show up on the left side, and we still have, our other links on the right side. So now that we have this in a div, I'm going to add some styling to this div. Let's do flex, item center, gap 4. Let's take a look at this now. So now we do get this little collapsed icon, although we're only going to really show that on small screens. What we can do is on this link, let's add a class, and we'll just say medium hidden. So on anything larger than a medium screen, it is now hidden, but then when you go down to mobile, it shows up. So I think that works pretty good. And then what we'll do is we'll add a data action. So just like this, and we'll say whenever you click on this button, this will go to the sidebar, and we can say toggle. We'll just add a toggle method to our sidebar controller. So now let's go over to JavaScript controllers, sidebar controller, and we have this connect method right here. I'm just going to rename this to toggle, and we're going to pass in the event, and we're going to want to prevent the default because since we're using a link to, whenever you click on this, it's going to try to navigate to this path, which is just empty, but it will still kind of, redirect the whole page. So we don't want to do that. We want to avoid that by preventing default. So now when you click, it doesn't actually try to follow through with that event. And then we can handle toggling the sidebar via JavaScript. So if we go in the console, we can even add a console log here, toggle sidebar. And check this out. If you click, every time you click, it is actually putting this event in the console. So the next thing that we're going to do is hook this up to the actual sidebar. So let's go to the views layouts, or not the views, let's go to the views dashboard, show, and let's see how we're rendering the sidebar. So we're just rendering it right here as sidebar. So let's go inside of that sidebar partial, and I'm going to add this whole sidebar as a target. So I'm going to say data sidebar target, and I'm just going to put the name of the target as sidebar, which might be confusing, but it's not that bad. I don't think it's not that bad. And let's go to the sidebar controller.js, and I'm going to define our targets. So say static targets equals an array, and then we're going to put that sidebar target. And another thing is on this sidebar, we should probably hide it by default, but only on mobile. So what we could say is hidden, then medium flex. So on larger screens, it wouldn't actually have the hidden class, but on these small screens, it is hidden. And you'll see as we reload, it does actually hide that sidebar, but when you go to a larger screen, it doesn't hide it anymore. That's basically what we want. And the last thing would just be going back to our controller and then toggling the class. So we can say this.sidebar target class list. We can just say toggle hidden. So that means if it's already there, it's going to remove it. If it's not there, it's going to add it. And that should actually work. Let's click, and boom. Mobile responsive in like just a few minutes. That was pretty cool. Now I want to make sure that the channel sidebar, or actually the server sidebar with the channels, I want to make sure that that works with the same functionality, which I'm pretty sure it doesn't. See, if we close it out, it doesn't actually close this server sidebar, which we do want to have that close as well. So all we have to do is just add the same functionality to that sidebar. So let's go to the views servers sidebar. And what I'll do is I'll have that same like hidden on mobile medium flex. And then I'll also set it as a target. So we'll say data sidebar target equals sidebar. Now, if we try to do this again, you'll notice that there is kind of like a weird glitch here. Let's go inside of here. And if I click toggle, it's not really working, like we can't see the channel sidebar, which is interesting. So what we actually want to do is we want to go back to our sidebar controller.js and see we're only targeting the first target, which means it would probably pull up only the dashboard sidebar and it wouldn't pull up the server sidebar. So instead, we need to loop over all of the targets. So say this.sidebar targets plural, and we could do for each loop on the target. Whoops. Okay, that was a weird glitch. And then we'll say target.classless toggle, which means it's going to loop over each target, and it should actually toggle all of them. So if we click, we come in here. It's still not working, but the reason is actually kind of funny. So if we click into the sidebar, what's happening is, oh, this is funny. So like by default, we're hiding it, which means when we do the toggle, it's kind of like it has this weird glitch now, when really we just want to show both things whenever we toggle it. So to work around that, we probably just want to have some sort of state. So we can do a connect and have like a sidebar open and set this to false by default. And then whenever we toggle, set this to true. And then instead of doing this, toggle, we can actually check inside of here. So let me change up this code. I put this in a block. And then we'll just check if this.sidebar opened. So if it is opened, then of course we would want to remove the hidden class. Otherwise, we would add a hidden class. Now, the idea behind this is that I guess if it's already opened, it shouldn't really affect anything. Although I feel like it's still going to have the same exact functionality. Let's see. If I click in, it doesn't show this channel sidebar by default, even though we have the menu open, so that's not really a good thing. Although, oh, when you click the link, it does almost show it, but then there's no other option because we're never setting sidebar opened equals true. So actually what we need to do is we need to set this to the opposite of whatever it previously was. So you can do that by just saying equals, not the value. And let's see how that works. So if I pop open this sidebar and then I click, okay, now it kind of works, but you have to click it a couple times to get it to work. So what we can probably do is we can just remove that default styling. So let's go to sidebar. Instead of having like the hidden median flex, let's totally remove that for now. And we can do that. I think we could just do it manually. Let's remove this hidden flex. Boom. So now it is showing it by default. The toggle seems to work really well now. I think it does. Although one weird thing is that the sidebar kind of like interferes with the rest of the content. But we probably just want that to overlay over the content. So we'd probably add like a absolute class so it doesn't actually push any of our content. But it looks like the toggling does kind of work, but we aren't really able to like close it that well. So if I want to just close it, I mean, actually that works pretty well. Then as soon as I send the message, it is like reloading everything, which is not great. We're gonna have to find a better way to fix this functionality. So I'm gonna go down to the server. Let's go to the channel show page. I want to take a look at this form. So this form should just be reloading the turbo frame. Oh, so yeah, check that out. So the server sidebar is still hidden, but what happens is the channel sidebar shows up when we reload the page because we're rendering that, I guess, on the server's show page. No, not. Is it the server show page? I think it's the channel show page. Two. Oh yeah, right here. We're rendering the sidebar. So what we actually need to do is inside of, I guess, oh yeah, I know what we could do. Let's go to the JavaScript controllers. And what we'll do is we'll add a callback on sidebar target connected. So whenever a new sidebar it pops up on the page, we can, toggle the class based on if the sidebar was opened. So what we'll probably do is extract this toggle class into a new method. Just call this toggle class, pop our code in here, and we'll do as soon as the new sidebar is connected, we can run this method. And then also when we toggle it, we'll run that method after we set whether the sidebar is opened or not. And I think that should actually work better. So let's reload, and by default it is closed. But then we click, it opens. We come in here, everything is actually, yeah, everything's looking perfect. The only thing is just, the styling. It's pushing the stuff out of the way, so we need to figure out how we can fix that. And instead, we probably just want it to take up the full width of the screen and like not scrunch up anything. So let's figure out how to do it. It's kind of tricky because we have two different elements. We have on the dashboard show page this sidebar, but then inside of this turbo frame we have another sidebar, so it becomes like this whole kind of complicated trick, but I think we can figure it out. So how about we have fixed, and how do I not do fixed on larger screens? I think this would be the position fixed, position absolute. So we need to figure out what's the default position in CSS. Static, right? It's just called static. It's kind of weird. So we'd say medium static. Let's see how that works. Oh, another thing is that now on medium, it's actually just hiding the sidebar because it's still running our JS, even though we're on a larger screen. So that becomes a little bit tricky, where we almost need to like check. That is tricky. We don't want to run our code on larger screens. Although if we're being real, like maybe having that slide out sidebar on larger screens isn't the worst thing. Although I think on Discord it automatically shows up and there's not really a collapse. I'm not sure. Well, maybe it's easier if we do just have that functionality. I'm not sure. But if we wanted to, let's say, do that, I think all we have to do is go back to the nav bar, and instead of hiding this toggle link, we can just show it. Show it on larger, and then boom, we can still open it up. Okay, that's not even that bad of an experience, now that I think about it. Because sometimes you might want to hide that sidebar on a larger screen anyways. So you just have to remember to like click here to open up your servers. And honestly, everything is working really well, in my opinion. And then if you want to collapse out, yeah, you know what? I like that. So why don't we just have the collapsing functionality work on larger screens and smaller screens? Oh, but here's the last thing. Here's the next thing we have to fix that was on mobile. Let's make this work a little bit nicer. So I think what's happening is that the fixed class is applying, but we're now kind of hiding the channel sidebar because it's behind this element. So what we have to do is let's go to the views servers sidebar, and let's add a fixed class to this too. And then on medium, actually no, let's not do medium static now that I think about it, because we're gonna have the same functionality. So why don't we just do fixed? So let's go back to this dashboard sidebar, remove the medium static. So it's just always going to be fixed. And then what we'll do is we'll say left 0 for this, dashboard sidebar. And then for the server sidebar, what I want to do is since they're both the same height with 80, I'll just say left 80 for the server sidebar, which means it'll have enough space on the left side to fit both of them. The only thing that we're not gonna cover is like if there was an overflow, which yeah, look right here, there is definitely an overflow. So you get like the server is kind of taking up too much space compared to the channel thing. You know what I mean? And then also when you click on it, I'd almost think that it would automatically close this sidebar just so that you can see the chat. So probably what we could do is just reduce the width of this main sidebar. So if you go to the dashboard sidebar, why don't we just reduce this width to like 36? Boom. Now it's a lot smaller. It doesn't really look worse. It's not bad, especially if you're just going to use an icon instead of the title. It's really not that bad. Then we just have to fix this server sidebar to, instead of having left 80, we'll do left 36. And then when you click toggle, actually, yeah, you know what? This is pretty good for me. It fits everything in the screen. There is a slight possibility that your phone might be small enough that there is some sort of UI bug, but this is pretty good for now, in my opinion. We're able to pop this out. The only last thing is maybe when you click on a room, we could close the sidebar. And adding something like that should be pretty easy. If we just go to the server sidebar, right here where we're rendering the link to open up the channel, we could have a action on this. We could just toggle the sidebar, but you'll notice that this will actually break functionality. It does close the sidebar, but it's no longer navigating to the link because inside of our sidebar controller, we're doing the prevent default. So we need to find out some way to work around that. And I think the easiest way is to add a param. So in JavaScript, in Stimulus.js, actually, we can add a param value. And to do that, we can say like, I think sidebar underscore, then the name of the param. So let's say like prevent underscore default param, and we'll set this to false. Or how about I call it skip prevent param, and I'll set this to true. Then inside of our stimulus controller, we can actually grab that param by saying e.params, and then grabbing called skip prevent. I think we can do this. Console log it to make sure that it works. This is where it gets like more complex. Like we have some pretty complex JavaScript at this point. Oh look, it works though. See, when you click, we're getting true. Otherwise, we're getting undefined. So all we have to basically do is say, if this param is there, we don't run this code. So actually, we can just say if not this param. Or we could also check if it's defined. So if, because you saw how there was like the undefined thing, we could say defined. Actually, I forgot how to do that. So let's just check if it is there. If not, the skip prevent, then we prevent it. I know this is kind of confusing, but I think this should work. So we click, yeah, check it out, check it out. So now it works. It closes the sidebar and it also navigates to the right place. But then when you click up here, it doesn't actually do the weird navigation glitch. So I think we got it working pretty well. This is cool. Like honestly, I think this is pretty awesome. We have mobile responsive, which means we could totally turn this into a Turbo iOS app and put it on the App Store. Look, I mean, this is working very well. Honestly, we can have mobile views talking to each other. Check it out, guys. Now, probably one thing we want to do is to reduce the space usage. We might want to, put this sign out link into a dropdown. So when you click on your username, we could have sign out, and then we could also have other links. Like we probably want the user to be able to edit their user information. Let's say they want to change their username, or they want to, uh, I guess if they want to add an avatar eventually, we're probably going to want to add a drop down up here. But I think what we've done in this episode is already so incredible. Oh wait, let's do this one last thing. So look at our sidebar. For whatever reason, our chat form is showing up on top. Like it looks like it's positioned on top of our sidebar, which is weird. And I know a really easy way to fix that. That's why let's handle this real quick before the end of this video. So all we have to do is go to both of our sidebar elements, and I'm going to add a Z index. I'll just set this to something really high, like 555. And we'll put this on the dashboard sidebar too. That should get rid of that glitch. So if we come back to our chat, open up the sidebar, now the sidebar shows up on top of the form, and there's no more weird glitch. All right. Yeah, I think this was a pretty successful part 2 to the Discord series. I hope you guys enjoyed and learned something new. If you have any ideas, or if you want to give me some feedback, or just tell me maybe how you would have built the feature, please leave a comment. I'm happy to respond. Like, I don't really like when people leave negative comments, so try to be nice, try to make it chill, and I'll be happy to respond and talk to each of you guys. Also, I'd love to learn about what you are working on, and I think eventually I will just like release this Discord app online, use it for my own channel to create a community, because I always hate using Discord for whatever reason, just because like some other guy made it. I'm the software developer, why don't I just build my own Discord? That's what we're doing now. Anyways, if you guys enjoyed, love you all so much, and we're gonna be back here. I'm gonna be grinding on videos daily. So stay tuned. Subscribe if you haven't already. Like the video. I appreciate you guys.